Eddie from the Deen Show has what might sound like a compelling argument for Muhammad being a prophet. In 1 minute, he made 5 points that on the surface might convince a naive person to believe in Islam. Am I convinced? Has the truth of Islam finally dawned on me? No. Let's see if these claims hold up to evidence. I'm going to go through each argument and show you just how bad they really are. Let's get into it.
Did you know that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the single most followed individual in human history?
Now, Eddie looks kind of sleepy here, but let's go through his points. Point number 1. Prophet Muhammad is the most followed individual in human history. First of all, if he's getting this from Michael Hart's The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, which ranks Muhammad as number 1, that's just his personal opinion. Hitler, Napoleon, and Stalin are also on the list. Are they prophets too? Even the Quran refutes this logic, and most of the people, even if you strive for it, are not believers. In Surah Yusuf 103, the Quran itself says truth isn't determined by majority, so how can Muslims now flip it and say, look how many people follow him, it must be true? That's a self-own. Being the most followed doesn't prove divinity. Christianity has more followers than Islam. Is Jesus the real God then? Numbers measure popularity, not truth. Billions can be sincerely wrong. History proves that over and over. Human beings are fallible and easily manipulated. This is why we need to remain skeptical of outlandish claims. A Muslim could say, we're not arguing that numbers alone prove truth, but that global long-term impact is evidence that deserves consideration. And to that I would say, no.
He was never known to lie. So my question to you is, so why would he lie about God? Even his harshest critics acknowledged that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was known as Al-Amin, the truthful, the trustworthy.
Point number 2. He was known for truthfulness. Even his harshest critics acknowledged that he was Al-Sadiq and Al-Amin, the trustworthy and the honest. With Muhammad, it's a stretch to say that his enemies praised him. People thought he was decent until he claimed to speak for God and threatened them with hell. Being trustworthy in trade doesn't transfer to being trustworthy in supernatural claims. After that point, they realized that they made a mistake thinking this guy was honest and trustworthy. Now, this might seem convenient, almost like they just don't want to hear the truth, but think about it in your own life. If someone, maybe a coworker who seemed perfectly normal and reasonable, started spouting some weird stuff about aliens coming down, and you have to join his special movement to be safe from the impending doom, how would you react? Would you be like, oh, this guy always told the truth, this must be true too? A normal, reasonable person would totally freak out and either be like, you're nuts, man, or back away silently. Plus, his critics called him crazy, majnoon, possessed, a plagiarist, a liar, a sorcerer, just a normal human with no miracles, having no clear signs, a forger, and so on. The skeptics of Muhammad's time weren't ignorant. They were asking the same questions that critics ask today. And back then, possessed was a common diagnosis for unexplainable behavior. If you want to know more about this unexplainable behavior, you can check out our Epileptic Prophet series where we go into great detail as to what was happening in Muhammad's mind. The Quran kept claiming that God would destroy them like he destroyed the previous nations, but it never happened. He just kept claiming that they had enough proof to believe him. He just kept claiming, you don't need any proof. Of course, this was contradicted by the Hadith, which claims a plethora of miracles, water coming from his fingers, splitting the moon, and so on. We can look at the Quran as evidence about the accusations that are made against Muhammad. This should also be a way to indicate whether he was called Al-Amin, but guess what? The Quran doesn't indicate that he was called Al-Amin. The title comes from later Islamic tradition, not independent historical records or from the Quran. It's found in Ibn Ishaq's Sirah, the earliest biography of Muhammad, later Hadith and Tafsir works from few hundred years after Muhammad. This actually takes away from the strength of the claim. If it was in the Quran, we could say, well, maybe this was true, but we don't have it there, so we don't know. And would you know that there are other prophets that were known for this too. Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, for example, in his early life he was known in his community as charismatic, spiritual, even trustworthy. Later he claimed to receive gold plates from an angel, translated to the Book of Mormon. All Muslims would claim he's a fraud, of course, right? He's a fraud, not Muhammad, but he was known for truthfulness. Like Muhammad, he started with a reputation for integrity, then claimed divine revelation and gained power, followers, and, you guessed it, multiple wives. Being known for truthfulness does not mean you'll always be truthful forever. People change, their mental states change, their circumstances change. In today's generation, this is what's called audience capture, where you notice what works with your audience and start making content to get more of them. Muhammad did the same back then as a cult leader. He noticed benefits of saying he spoke to God, and then the revelation started flowing. A Muslim could argue, you're assuming he just started making random claims, but the Quran was revealed over 23 years, building gradually with clear moral and legal frameworks. That's not alien rambling. Well, actually, if you read the Quran, it's basically the ramblings of a madman. Most of it is threats of hell, personal threats to his enemies, like in Surah Lahab, to his uncle and his wife, excuses on how to treat his wives worse, telling off companions to not stay too long at his house. Before I get to the next point, a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel. The Dawah guys are not ready for what's coming next. This channel is going to have an impact like never before, and I want you to be here for the ride. Okay, back to the video.
The question is, if he never lied about worldly matters, why would he lie about something as weighty as God? Think about that.
Point number 3. Since he never lied about worldly matters, why would he lie about something as significant as God? Let's lay this out as a logical claim. If he never lied about worldly matters, why would he lie about God? The response is, this is known as a false dichotomy. I love using these logical fallacies because it uses a few words to convey a lot of meaning. I'll explain now. This argument assumes there's only two options. He lied about God, or he told the truth. It ignores a third probable option. He believed what he was saying sometimes, but he was mistaken, deluded, or mentally unwell. People genuinely believe all sorts of false things. It's not like Allah is verifiable. If you claim an angel spoke to you in a cave, no one else can validate that, and it gives you unchallengeable authority. Muhammad was also wrong sometimes. For example, the date palm story. He gave bad advice to the companions and it turned out badly for them. They lost the battle of Uhud. And even in his teachings, Muhammad did lie or permit lying, especially in warfare, for political or strategic reasons. For example, when he allowed them to deceive and lie and assassinate Ka'b ibn Ashraf, or to achieve outcomes he considered beneficial, like lying to one's wife. Even if lying in war or diplomacy was normal for that time, it undermines the claim that he was a truthful, never lying prophet. It proves that he saw truth-telling as conditional, not absolute. Say you have a man who said a few things right, but then expects you to blindly believe everything they told you. He also allows lying in certain occasions. If someone is truthful a few times, does that mean that everything they say has to be correct? Or do we need to validate each time? Yes, we do. We can generally trust people based on what they say if it's within the scope of their competency, but not otherwise. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. We can't just accept prophets at face value because we know how easy it is to lie and make things up. There needs to be something more than he never lied.
In fact, his life shows the opposite. He endured immense hardship, persecution, and even exile for his message.
Point number 4, Muhammad endured hardship. Let's tackle this point. Yes, Muhammad faced persecution and hardship early on in Mecca, but so did many other false prophets and cult leaders. Joseph Smith was tarred and jailed. David Quraysh faced armed opposition. Countless deluded and manipulative figures have suffered for their beliefs. Suffering doesn't validate truth. It just shows commitment, and committed people can be very wrong. This is the same argument some Christians use for the early apostles. All it proves is that they sincerely believed, or they felt it was worth the sacrifice. This ties in nicely to point number 5, no material gain.
If his goal had been power, wealth, status, he had an ample opportunities to compromise, like many do, or abandon his mission. But instead, he remained steadfast, emphasizing absolute, pure monotheism, justice, good character, morality, even at a great personal cost. So logically and historically, there is no reason to assume he fabricated his message.
Point number 5, no material gain. He had opportunities to abandon his mission for power or wealth, but chose to uphold pure monotheism, justice, and morality. Muslims claim Muhammad gained nothing. This point is the biggest point in this video. He was just a simple man sleeping on the floor, eating bread and dates. He gave away his wealth and so on. There's a lot of lies here to unpack and some half-truths. So let's put this to rest once and for all. Each of these points I'm going to mention now can be a video in themselves. So in interest of time, I'm going to keep it short. The hardship, first of all, didn't last long. Once he migrated to Medina, everything changed. Yes, he was ejected, but so are many ambitious men until they seized control. Then he became a political leader. He gained massive worldly benefits, especially after his migration to Medina. Let's list them out clearly and unapologetically. So the first point is financial power. As mentioned in the Quran, Muhammad got 1/5 of all the war booty. And know that out of all the booty that you may acquire in war, a 5th share is assigned to Allah and the Messenger. Muhammad received 20% of all the spoils of war, as mentioned in the Quran. This wasn't charity, this was direct personal wealth. In a hadith in Bukhari, we learned that he took his living expenses for the whole year from this wealth. He also controlled zakat, land taxes, and tribute from subjugated tribes. If you want to know the possessions of Prophet Muhammad, even Islamic sources list multiple swords, armor sets, mules, camels, horses, personal jewelry, fine cloaks, and Yemeni garments. One famous example is the sword Dul Fakr, a prized two-pointed blade. Originally owned by an unbeliever Al-As ibn Munabbih, this sword came into Muhammad's possession as booty from the Battle of Badr in 624. Islamic tradition recounts the Prophet owning 9 swords, including one inlaid with silver and multiple sets of armor. These were far costlier arms than an average Arab tribesman would possess. He owned slaves, household slaves like Maria the Copt and others. In total, nobody knows exactly how many, some saying over 30. But we know from multiple sources such as Ibn Sa'd's Tabaqat, Al-Tabari, Bukhari, Muslim, and Abu Dawood that Muhammad owned multiple slaves at different times. He bought and sold and gifted. These are not the belongings of a humble desert ascetic. They're the trophies of a religious warlord. Not to mention, after expelling the Jewish tribe of Banu Nadir from Medina around 625, Muhammad and his companions confiscated the land, homes, and especially the lush date orchards. This is mentioned in the Quran in 59:6. He kept some for himself and distributed the rest. The Quran describes how after vanquishing the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza in Medina, He, Allah, caused you to inherit their lands, their houses, and their riches, and a land which you had not trodden before. Muhammad also received valuable gifts and tribute payments from various rulers and tribes, especially as his influence grew. For instance, after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah in 628, the Byzantine governor of Egypt sent an envoy with lavish gifts for Muhammad. Early chroniclers report that he presented him with 4 slave girls, one of whom was Maria, a white mule named Duldul, a donkey named Yafor, and sets of fine garments. Pretty funny they preserved the animals' names if you ask me. These luxury animals and clothing were delivered to Medina and personally retained by Muhammad. In addition to Banu Nadir's estates, other lands fell to Muhammad without battle. The oasis of Fadak was surrendered by its Jewish inhabitants in fear after Khaybar's fall, and Muhammad took it as his private property since no fighting occurred there, meaning he gets to keep the whole thing. If you want to know what happened to the Jews of Medina, check out my video, What Happened to the Jews of Arabia. The key point is that by virtue of conquest and prophethood, Muhammad came to possess extensive real estate, a marked change from his earlier impoverished status in Mecca. Muhammad's herd of riding animals also grew substantially due to gifts and conquests, and they're considered valuable property. After battles, he would receive a share of camels and sheep. For example, at the Battle of Hunain, thousands of camels and goats were taken. Muhammad set aside a portion for himself before distributing the rest. He was given excellent horse, was named Sabha, gifted by a Bedouin which Muhammad kept for its speed. And to acknowledge the Muslim argument, yes, he gave to the poor, yes, he freed slaves, but he also amassed power, land, and women. things that directly benefited him. Freeing a few token slaves and giving a bit of charity while creating a system to enable slavery and to rob others doesn't make you a good man. I mean, even Hitler loved puppies, right? Political authority, total rule in Medina, no checks and balances. His word was law. In legal, military, and spiritual matters, critics were silenced, often violently. Decisions were from Allah, conveniently backing his every move. The Quran strongly affirms that no believer may challenge or disobey his decisions. It's not for a believing man or woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decreed a matter, to have any choice in it. For example, when Muhammad decided to marry Zainab, his former daughter-in-law, the community had to accept it as God's will, despite the initial discomfort. One verse from the Quran warns, O believers, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, lest your deeds become void while you are unaware. Simply speaking loudly or rudely in Muhammad's presence could nullify one's good deeds. Sexual acts as wives and concubines. He had at least 11 wives, more than allowed for other Muslims. A striking example is after the defeat of Banu Qurayza, he, Muhammad, enslaved all the women and selected Rayhana bin Zayd for himself because she was the most beautiful. Rayhana was a Jewish woman from Qurayza whom Muhammad took as his personal slave concubine. This case illustrates that Muhammad claimed the choicest female captives for himself. This is exclusively for you, not for the rest of the believers, the Quran says. This is a tangible social and sexual benefit tied directly to his prophethood, as it allowed him to have more wives than the others and to satisfy his personal desires beyond ordinary constraints. He also married Aisha when she was a child, despite Abu Bakr's initial reservation. He claimed God gave him special, exclusive sexual privileges to these women, who could never get married again after his death. The rules for sex changed when he wanted someone, like when he took away Sauda's night in exchange for more nights with his child bride. Muhammad benefited from being the source of law in Islam. Rules or exceptions that favored him were his revelations. One of my first and favorite videos I made on the old channel was Allah's favorite prophet, where I listed out convenient revelations that Muhammad received. Suppression of criticism. Apostates and critics were silenced or killed. It was an absolute, complete control he had. In Medina, several individuals who opposed Muhammad in poetry were executed on his order or with his approval. Early biographers like Ibn Ishaq record how Muhammad asked his followers to assassinate critics, such as the Jewish poet Ka'b bin Ashraf, who had mocked him. So many examples of this, too many to mention in this video. If you want me to make a video on how Muhammad killed his opponents, leave a comment. Psychological power. Okay, this is the most powerful one of all. He claimed disbelief equals eternal hellfire. Loyalty to him equals entry into paradise. He had convinced his companions to the point that they would drink his sweat. Like many other cult leaders, he framed questioning him as questioning God. If you want to get a glimpse of this, just look at how celebrity imams like Hamza Yusuf are treated, or cult leaders are treated. They get access to be driven around by others, gifts, they get to stay at people's houses, women throw themselves at them, etc. How do you think Muhammad lived? Like a king, but even more so. They hung on his every word. Omar was always threatening to kill those who were even rude to him. Military glory and revenge. He led dozens of raids and battles. He gained military prestige and settled personal scores. Enemies like the Quraysh were eventually humiliated and conquered. He went from a mocked outcast in Mecca to a conquering warlord. Probably felt good about executing his opponents. Is that not a benefit? Again, I could do a full video on this, but I'm going to keep it quick. Let me know if you want to see more about this in the comments. And Eddie's final point, number 6. What about his profound impact?
His sincerity, sacrifice, and the profound impact of his teachings all reinforce that he truly was a messenger, the final messenger for all of humanity from God. Something to really think about.
His sincerity, his sacrifice, and his teachings reinforce his authenticity as a final messenger of God, right? This is similar to the popularity argument. Yes, the impact is huge. 1.9 billion Muslims today. Islam shaped entire civilizations, art, science, law, politics. Arabic spread across continents. Empires rose in his name. The Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Ottomans. Countless lives, laws, and wars have been shaped by Islamic doctrine. But this is just like Christianity shaped Europe or communism shaped the 20th century. Does it make any of those true? We don't say Stalin was a prophet just because he changed the map. It's just a feel-good point. It doesn't prove anything. And listen up. More importantly, impact can come from fear, control, or force. Islam spread through military conquest, Persia for example, legal enforcement, apostasy laws and blasphemy laws, social pressures such as ostracism and honor killings, and repetition and indoctrination from early childhood. These mechanisms can spread any ideology, true or false. Sure, some people genuinely converted, but Islam's long-term growth was supercharged by coercion. And actually, I have a final bonus point, number 6, to respond to. Muhammad brought us pure monotheism. Islam isn't monotheism. It's Muhammado-idolatry with a side of Allah. So basically, this is far from true. It's just Islam's PR campaign. Let's look at the reality of the situation. Muhammad is a demigod. The Shahada is dualistic. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. If Islam is purely monotheistic, why is Muhammad's name part of the central creed? It's not just monotheism. It's always Muhammad and Allah, Allah and his messenger, always together. That's not about God. It's about submission to a man's authority. If you insult Allah, nobody cares. But if you mock Muhammad, suddenly it's jihad time. He's the most not worshipped man on earth. Islam retains key pagan elements. The Kaaba is a pre-Islamic pagan shrine. It was used by idolaters to house 360 idols. It still circles 7 times during Hajj. The black stone Hajar al-Aswad is kissed, just like pagans did. Even though Muslims claim they only do it because Muhammad did, is this not a strange monotheistic practice? Safa and Marwa were hills originally used in pagan rituals. Even the Quran acknowledges people's discomfort with them. Why would anyone need reassurance unless they were known pagan relics? In general, the Hajj and Umrah rituals are largely preserved from pre-Islamic practices. Ihram, Tawaf, Sa'i, standing at Arafat. Muhammad Islamicized them. He didn't invent them. So pure monotheism? More like paganism with a theological facelift. When Hajj comes in a few months, I'm going to be tackling this in detail, so stay subscribed for that. In conclusion, multiple early sources confirm Muhammad derived substantial material benefits from his role. He acquired wealth, wielded control over captives, enjoyed special sexual dispensations, and held unchallengeable authority. Far from living as an ascetic, Muhammad, by the end of his life, was an undisputed ruler with all the material privileges that entailed. Islam may have started with struggle, but ended in power, control, and fear. It didn't uplift humanity, it subdued it. Yes, Muhammad did have a huge impact on the world, but it was a net negative. He may have been truthful at one point if you accept the later narrations in the hadith, but he was also known to be a liar and forged things after that. Just because he didn't lie early on doesn't automatically mean he never lied after that. Even if he initially struggled, he did get huge benefits from the religion. The Islamic religion did have a huge impact on the world, but that says more about the fear and control in the religion. And lastly, calling Islam monotheistic is laughable, more like reformed paganism with 2 gods, Allah and Muhammad. Looking for another interesting video to watch? Look up, Does the Quran Preach Peace or Hate? Next. Thanks for watching, and thank you to my patrons who have kept the lights on and kept the channel alive during tough times. Please join if you'd like to give back in some way. Patreon is preferred, or YouTube membership. Your help is most appreciated. This is your friendly ex-Muslim Abdullah Samir signing out.